At my son's funeral, I heard my daughter-in-law laughing with her lover. That old woman will suffer in our hands. After a month living with me, they begged to leave. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The weight of my black dress felt unbearable as I stood before Carlton's casket. My only child, my beautiful boy, gone at just 42. The doctor called it a sudden heart attack. These things happen, he'd said, avoiding my eyes. But mothers know better. Carlton had been healthy his whole life. Rain fell in gentle drops around us at Pinecrest Cemetery, as if the sky itself was weeping for my loss. I clutched a white rose so tightly the thorns dug into my palm, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache in my chest. "Mrs. Taylor, would you like to say a few words?" Pastor Williams asked, his hand gently touching my shoulder. I shook my head, unable to form sentences through the fog of grief. The funeral passed in fragments, faces blurring together, hands patting my back, voices murmuring empty comforts. Through it all, one person remained strangely composed. Wren, my daughter-in-law of 5 years. While I could barely stand, Wren's eyes were dry, her makeup flawless. She accepted condolences with practiced grace, almost like an actress playing the role of grieving widow. Something felt wrong, but grief plays tricks on your mind. I told myself everyone processes loss differently. As we sigh, the service ended and people began to disperse. I needed a moment alone. I walked to the old oak tree where Carlton used to play as a child. This cemetery had been part of our neighborhood, back when life was simple and full of promise. That's when I heard it. Laughter. I froze, hidden behind the massive trunk. Wren's voice, unmistakable even in hushed tones, came from just beyond the row of hedges. "I can't believe how smoothly everything went," she whispered, but not quietly enough. "The insurance policy alone is worth almost $1 million. A man's voice answered her. Unfamiliar, deep, amused. "You played your part beautifully, babe. The grieving widow? I almost believed it myself. Please, I've been rehearsing for years." Wren's voice turned cold in a way I'd never heard before. 2 more weeks and we can be together properly." "What about the old woman?" the man asked. "Sherry?" Wren laughed again, the sound like glass shattering in my ears. "This old woman will suffer in our hands. She's completely clueless. Carlton was her whole world, and now she has nothing. No one. The house is worth a fortune," the man continued. "I would later come to know him as Ross. Waterfront property in that neighborhood? We could sell it and disappear. We just need to play the caring daughter-in-law a little longer," Wren said. "I'll suggest moving in to help her through this difficult time. She'll be so grateful. For the company, she'll never suspect a thing." My legs nearly gave out. I clutched the oak tree, its rough bark cutting into my fingers. My heart hammered so loudly I feared they would hear it. "And once we're in?" Ross asked. "We break her," Wren replied simply. "Make her think she's losing her mind. At her age, it won't take much. Then we convince her to sign over the house, maybe. Even get power of attorney. After that, well, nursing homes can be such lonely places." They laughed together, the sound echoing through the cemetery like a curse. I don't remember walking back to the gathering. I don't remember the drive home, or the casserole dishes neighbors brought, or changing out of my funeral clothes. All I remember is sitting in Carlton's old room that night, staring at his high school trophies, and making a decision. My son was gone. My husband had passed years ago. I was 63 years old with arthritic knees and reading glasses I could never find. Wren and her lover thought I would be easy prey, a grieving old woman they could manipulate and discard. 1 week later, Wren called with the exact proposal I'd overheard at the cemetery. "Sherry," I've been thinking, her voice gentle with practiced concern. This house is so big for you to manage alone, and I'm rattling around in that apartment with all the memories. Maybe I could move in for a while. We could help each other through this. I closed my eyes, seeing again her smirking face at the funeral, hearing her callous words beside my son's grave. That would be such a comfort, I replied, my voice trembling. Not with gratitude as she assumed, but with rage. Oh, wonderful! The relief in her voice was palpable. And would it be all right if my cousin Ross stayed too? Just temporarily. He's been such a support to me, and he's great with household repairs. Her cousin. Of course. The more the merrier, I said softly. This house has been too quiet since Carlton. We'll take good care of you, Sherry, Wren promised. You won't have to worry about a thing. As I hung up the phone, I looked at Carlton's picture on the mantel. They think I'm a helpless old woman, I whispered to him. They have no idea who they're dealing with. They would move in expecting to find a broken-down widow. Instead, they would find me, Sherry Taylor, waiting for them, with 63 years of life experience and a mother's fury burning quietly behind my smile. The day Wren and Ross moved in was unseasonably cold for September. I watched from the kitchen window as they unloaded far more boxes than a temporary stay would warrant. Ross, now introduced as Wren's cousin who's going through a tough divorce, carried in sleek designer luggage and expensive electronics. For someone supposedly helping out of familial duty, he seemed remarkably comfortable directing the movers where to place his things. Sherry, we brought you something, Wren sang out, entering the kitchen with a small potted orchid. To brighten your day. I accepted it with a trembling smile. How thoughtful. Carlton always said you had an eye for beautiful things. A flicker of something, annoyance, guilt, passed across her face at the mention of my son, but she recovered quickly. I thought we could use the guest room upstairs, and Ross can take the den, if that's all right. It has that lovely pull-out sofa. The den. Carlton's home office, still filled with his books, his awards, the fishing photos we'd take every summer at Lake Tahoe. The den still has all of Carlton's things, I said softly. Oh. Wren exchanged a glance with Ross. Well, we should probably start going through those soon anyway. It's not healthy to keep shrine rooms, Sherry. All the grief counselors say so. Before I could respond, Ross interjected, I don't mind moving things around. I'm pretty handy that way. Within 3 days, Carlton's presence in the house began to fade like a photograph left in sunlight. His books were boxed up to donate to the library. His fishing gear was moved to the garage, since it's just taking up space. His clothes were bagged for Goodwill because he would have wanted someone to use them. Each night, I would retrieve one small item, a baseball cap, a coffee mug, his favorite pen, and hide it in my room, desperate to preserve some trace of my son. By the end of the first week, the invasion expanded. Wren replaced family photos with abstract art prints. My comfortable old sofa was pushed to the side to make room for her modern leather sectional. Even the kitchen was transformed, my familiar tea kettle and spice rack relegated to cupboards, while sleek appliances I didn't know how to operate took their place. We're just helping modernize a bit, Wren explained when she caught me staring confusedly at the new espresso machine. It's the least we can do after you opened your home to us. My home. That they were systematically erasing and remaking. I began noticing other changes too. Mail I was certain had arrived would mysteriously disappear. My reading glasses constantly went missing. The thermostat was always adjusted to temperatures that left me shivering. Did you move my bank statement? I asked one morning, searching through the stack of mail on the counter. What bank statement? Wren replied innocently, not looking up from her phone. It came yesterday. I left it right here. You probably put it somewhere and forgot, Ross suggested, sharing a look with Wren. Happens to my mom all the time. Memory gets a little spotty at your age. At night, I would lie awake, listening to their murmured conversations through the thin walls. Once, I heard Wren laugh, that same harsh laugh from the cemetery, and say, "She asked about the bank statement." "Today. Did she suspect anything?" Ross asked. "Please. I just told her she forgot where she put it. By tomorrow, she'll believe it herself." Another night, I crept downstairs for a glass of water and found them huddled over papers at the dining table, speaking in urgent whispers. "We need to move faster," Ross insisted. "The money situation is getting tight." "I'm working on it," Wren hissed back. "These things take time. We need her to trust us completely. It's been almost 3 weeks. How much longer before we can get her to sign?" "Sign what?" I wondered, my blood running cold. The next morning I noticed my checkbook had been moved from its drawer. Small amounts began disappearing from my purse. $20 here, $40 there, as if they were testing what I would notice. They grew bolder as the month progressed. Wren began answering my phone, screening my calls. "Just telemarketers," she'd say smoothly, even when I recognized my friend Margaret's number on the caller ID. Dinner became an exercise in psychological warfare. They would set the table and forget to include a place for me, act surprised when I appeared. "Oh, Sherry, we didn't think you'd want to join us. You seemed so tired earlier," Wren would say, slowly setting out another plate while Ross rearranged the food to stretch for 3 instead of 2. They criticized everything, my taste in television shows, so outdated, my gardening habits, wasteful, even the way I took my coffee. "All that sugar at your age?" Each comment delivered with a concerned smile, as if they were only thinking of my welfare. The breaking point came exactly 1 month after they moved in. I woke to find them in my bedroom, rifling through my jewelry box. "What are you doing?" I demanded, sitting up in bed. They didn't even try to look guilty. Wren held up my diamond wedding band, the one Harold had given me 40 years ago. "Just cataloging your valuables, Sherry. For insurance purposes." "I never asked you to do that. Don't you remember?" Ross said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We discussed this yesterday. You agreed it was a good idea. We had discussed—" "No such thing." The look they exchanged sent a chill through me, not of fear, but of absolute clarity. This was their game, gaslighting an old woman, making her doubt her own mind. That night, I heard them through the wall again. "The jewelry alone is worth thousands," Wren was saying excitedly. "And I found the deed to the house in her filing cabinet." "What about the will?" Ross asked. "Has she updated it since Carlton died?" "Not yet. But once we get power of attorney, it won't matter. We can liquidate everything before anyone knows what happened." I closed my eyes, my hands clutching Carlton's baseball cap against my chest. They thought I was losing my memory, my grip on reality. They thought I was a helpless old woman they could manipulate and discard. But they had forgotten something important. Before I was Sherry Taylor, grieving mother and widow, I had been Cheryl Wilson, the accounting firm office manager who had caught the company embezzler that even the professional auditors had missed. I had spent my life noticing details. And tomorrow I would start using that skill against them. As I drifted to sleep, I thought I felt Carlton's presence beside me. "I won't let them win, son," I whispered into the darkness. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." The next morning, I woke before dawn, my mind surprisingly clear despite the restless night. While Wren and Ross still slept upstairs, I sat at my kitchen table, the one corner of my home they hadn't yet colonized, and made a list. First, I needed allies. Being isolated was dangerous. Second, I needed evidence of what they were doing. Third, I needed to protect what was mine without letting them know I was onto their scheme. My hands shook as I wrote, but not from fear or age. It was anger, pure, focused anger that burned away the fog of grief that had surrounded me since Carlton's death. I waited until I heard their shower running before I made my first call. "Margaret? It's Sherry. I need your help, but you can't let anyone know we've spoken." Margaret had been my friend for 30 years. She'd stood beside me when Harold died, brought meals for weeks when Carlton went through his teenage rebellion phase, and never once questioned why I needed so many girls' nights during those difficult years. Sherry. I've been worried sick. I've called a dozen times, but that daughter-in-law of yours keeps saying you're resting or not feeling up to talking. Listen carefully, I whispered, keeping one eye on the staircase. I don't have much time. Ren and her boyfriend, yes, boyfriend, not cousin, are trying to take everything. They think I'm losing my mind, and they're creating situations to make it look that way. Margaret didn't hesitate, didn't question. What do you need me to do? Call Dr. Peterson. I need an appointment, but they can't know about it. And Margaret? I need you to contact James at the bank. Tell him not to authorize any changes to my accounts without speaking to me in person. And only me. By the time Ren glided downstairs, her hair perfectly styled despite the casual lounge clothes she wore around the house, I was sitting innocently with my crossword puzzle. "Good morning, Sherry," she said, already moving to the espresso machine. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied, watching as she subtly checked the counters, likely looking for any mail she could intercept. "Ross and I were thinking," she began, not bothering with small talk, "you've been seeming a bit confused lately, forgetful. We're concerned." I widened my eyes, playing directly into her script. "Forgetful? Well, I am getting older," she pounced on this admission. "There's no shame in it, but maybe we should think about having a doctor check you out. Nothing serious, just a wellness visit." "That's very thoughtful," I said mildly. "Perhaps in a few weeks." "Oh, but why wait? Health shouldn't be postponed. I could even call Dr. Everhart today. Ross's sister works in his office. I bet we could get you in this week." Of course they had a doctor lined up. Probably someone who'd write whatever evaluation they wanted for the right price. I prefer Dr. Peterson. I've been seeing her for years. Ren's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, I'm sure she's fine for routine matters, but Dr. Everhart specializes in geriatric care." Geriatric. The word hung in the air like an insult. "I'll think about it," I murmured, returning to my crossword puzzle. After breakfast, I announced I was going to tend my garden, the one hobby they hadn't yet tried to take from me. Once outside, I made another quick call. "Liz? It's Sherry Taylor. I was wondering if you could come over today. My roses need attention, and my knees aren't what they used to be." Liz wasn't just my gardener. She had been a legal secretary for 40 years before retirement. More importantly, she was observant and fiercely protective of older women, having watched her own mother fall victim to a predatory caregiver. While we worked in the garden that afternoon, I quietly explained what was happening. Ren watched from the window occasionally, but all she saw was an old woman chatting with her gardener. "Let me get this straight," Liz whispered, deadheading a rose bush with perhaps more force than necessary. "They're gaslighting you, trying to isolate you, and planning to take control of your finances? I heard them discussing power of attorney last night." Liz's pruning shears snipped sharply. "That's elder abuse, plain and simple. We need to document everything." For the next hour, under the guise of gardening, we developed a plan. Liz would bring me a small camera the following day, hidden in a potted plant. "A housewarming gift. For your guests," she said with a grim smile. That evening, after a dinner where Ross accidentally spilled water on my lap and Ren suggested perhaps I should start wearing adult diapers, just in case, I excused myself early, claiming fatigue. Instead of sleeping, I carefully searched my room for any signs they'd been through my things again. The jewelry box had been rearranged, and my address book was slightly out of position. In the back of my closet, I found my spare checkbook missing 2 checks. I documented everything in a small notebook, which I then hid inside a hollowed-out romance novel, the one place I knew Ren would never look. Her disdain for old lady books would finally serve a purpose. The next morning brought a surprise. Margaret at my door with a casserole and a too bright smile. I was just in the neighborhood, she announced loudly before whispering, "Play?" "Along." Wren appeared almost instantly, her expression carefully composed into polite welcome tinged with concern. "Mrs. Fleming, how nice of you to visit. But Sherry's been having such a difficult time lately. Perhaps another day would be better." Margaret, bless her, simply barreled past Wren with the confidence of a woman who'd taught high school English for 40 years. Nonsense. Grief isn't contagious, and isolation only makes it worse. As Wren hovered uncomfortably, Margaret pulled a photo album from her oversized purse. "Found this while cleaning. Thought you might like to see some old pictures of Carlton's. Baseball days." For the next hour, we reminisced about Carlton while Wren grew increasingly agitated, unable to find a reason to end the visit without seeming cruel. When Margaret finally left, she pressed something into my hand. A small tape recorder. "Old school," she whispered, "but reliable." That night, I placed the recorder under my bed before I called out, "Wren, could you help me find my medicine?" Expected, she appeared in my doorway, impatience barely concealed beneath her helpful facade. "Which medicine, Sherry? You really should let me organize your pills. It would be so much easier." "The blue ones," I said vaguely. "For my heart." "I don't remember you having heart medication." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Dr. Peterson prescribed them last month. They should be here somewhere." "Are you sure? Your memory has been—" "Oh, maybe I'm confused," I backtracked, watching as satisfaction spread across her features. After she left, I checked the recorder. Her voice came through perfectly, questioning my medication, suggesting memory problems. One small piece of evidence secured. The next day, Liz brought the camera disguised in a lovely arrangement of peace lilies. "For your lovely guests," she announced loudly when Ross answered the door. That night, I carefully positioned the plant in the living room, its hidden lens aimed directly at the dining table where Wren and Ross often spread out their papers after. They thought I was asleep. My trap was set. Now I just needed them to walk into it. When I finally crawled into bed, exhaustion hit me like a physical force. I clutched Carlton's baseball cap to my chest, allowing myself one moment of raw grief. "I'm fighting back, son," I whispered. "They think I'm just a confused old woman. But they've underestimated me. Just like everyone always underestimates women like me." For the first time since my son's funeral, I slept deeply, dreamlessly. Tomorrow would bring either evidence or disappointment, but either way, I was done, being their victim. The hidden camera proved more valuable than I could have imagined. When I carefully retrieved the memory card the next morning, while Wren was in the shower and Ross had gone for his daily run, what I saw made my blood run cold. There, they were, sitting at my dining table after midnight, surrounded by my financial documents, bank statements, and property papers. Wren was filling out a form I immediately recognized, a power of attorney document. Ross was making a list of my assets, including items I'd never even told them about: my safety deposit box, Harold's vintage watch collection, and a small, lakeside cabin in Maine that Carlton and I had purchased as a future retirement spot. "The old bat has no idea how much she's worth," Ross said, his voice tinny through the camera's microphone but unmistakably gleeful. "These property values alone." "Focus," Wren snapped. "We need to get her declared incompetent. Dr. Everhart will." "Help! But we need more documentation of her episodes." Ross looked up from his list. "Maybe we should increase the dosage in her tea. Make her really loopy for the doctor's appointment." My heart nearly stopped. They were drugging me? Suddenly, the strange aftertaste in my evening tea, my unusual grogginess and confusion made horrifying sense. I'd attributed it to grief and stress, but it had been them all along. "Not too much," Wren cautioned. "We don't want an emergency room visit. Just enough to make her seem confused and forgetful." She tapped a small brown bottle beside her. 3 drops in her evening tea, 2 in her morning coffee. The evidence was damning, but I needed more. I needed to prove they were drugging me, Needed to catch them in enough acts that no one could dismiss it as misunderstanding or coincidence. Most importantly, I needed to stop ingesting whatever they were giving me. That morning, I began my counteroffensive. First, I poured my coffee down the sink when they weren't looking and only pretended to sip my tea. I made a show of becoming progressively more confused as the day went on, forgetting words mid-sentence, asking the same questions repeatedly, even shuffling my walk slightly. "Sherry, are you feeling all right?" Wren asked, barely concealing her satisfaction as I struggled to remember what day it was. "Just tired," I mumbled, watching as she exchanged a knowing look with Ross. "Maybe you should lie down," she suggested, her voice dripping with false concern. "Ross and I can handle dinner tonight." Perfect. With them occupied in the kitchen, I called Dr. Peterson from my bedroom. "I need a blood test," I whispered urgently after explaining the situation. "Today, if possible." Dr. Peterson had been my physician for 15 years. She'd treated Harold through his final illness and helped Carlton manage his seasonal allergies. More importantly, she was sharp as a tack and fiercely protective of her elderly patients. "I can send a mobile phlebotomist to your neighborhood," she said without hesitation. "Can you meet them somewhere nearby?" I thought quickly. "The corner. Market. I can say I need some fresh air." An hour later, after making a show of being disoriented and needing a walk to clear my head, I met a discreet medical technician behind Miller's grocery store. The blood draw took less than 5 minutes. "We'll rush this," she promised. Dr. Peterson marked it priority. When I returned home, Wren was waiting, her face a mask of worry that didn't reach her eyes. "Sherry," we were concerned. "You shouldn't wander off like that." "I just needed some air," I said, deliberately slurring my words slightly. Felt foggy. "Let me help you to bed," she insisted, taking my arm in a grip firmer than necessary. "Ross and I think you should see Dr. Everhart tomorrow. I've already called to make an appointment." So they were accelerating their timeline. Good. The more pressure they felt to act quickly, the more mistakes they would make. That night, I emptied my tea into a small container I'd hidden under my bed while pretending to take a long sip. The next morning, Margaret picked it up under the guise of returning a casserole dish. By afternoon, Dr. Peterson called with the results. "Benzodiazepines," she said gravely. "A fairly high concentration, consistent with someone being dosed regularly." "Sherry, this is criminal activity. We need to contact the police." "Not yet," I insisted. "I need more evidence. If we move too soon, they'll claim I took the medication myself and forgot. They'll turn it around, make me look senile." "This is dangerous," Dr. Peterson cautioned. "These drugs can cause serious side effects, especially at your age." "I'm not drinking anything they give me anymore," I assured her. "Just give me a few more days to build my case." When Ross drove me to see Dr. Everhart the next day, a thin, distracted man who asked leading questions and seemed determined to find signs of dementia, I played my part perfectly. I fumbled with simple memory tasks, looked confused when asked about recent events, and allowed my hands to tremble visibly when filling out forms. Dr. Everhart nodded knowingly at Ross several times during the examination. "We'll need to run. Some more tests?" he said. Not to me, but to Ross, as if I wasn't capable of understanding. "But there are definite signs of cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia." Ross couldn't hide his smile. "We've been noticing changes for months." Her son, my cousin Carlton, was worried before he passed. It's why Wren moved in to help care for her. The blatant lie made me want to scream, but I kept my confused expression firmly in place. That evening, I overheard them on the phone with someone discussing legal options and next steps. They were moving faster now, emboldened by Dr. Everhart's preliminary diagnosis. I needed to accelerate my own plans. The next morning, I called my neighbor Thomas, a retired police detective who had always watched out for me. "I need your help," I told him, explaining the situation in hushed tones while sitting in his kitchen. They're planning something big, and I need to be ready. Thomas's face darkened with each word. This is elder abuse, Sherry. Drugging you, manipulating you, trying to steal your assets. These are serious crimes. I know, but I need irrefutable proof. Something so clear that no one can question it, even if they try to paint me as confused or forgetful. Together, we devised the final phase of my plan. Thomas would install additional hidden cameras, more sophisticated than my simple nanny cam, and set up recording devices throughout the house. His son, an IT specialist, would help ensure that all footage was automatically backed up to a secure server. Give me 2 days, Thomas promised. Then we'll have everything we need to nail these vultures. As I returned home, I found Wren and Ross waiting for me, their expressions a carefully composed mixture of concern and determination. Sherry, we need to talk, Wren began, gesturing to the living room where several official-looking documents were spread on the coffee table. It's about your future. I looked at the papers, then back at their expectant faces, and allowed my expression to crumple into confusion. What's all this? Just some simple paperwork, Ross said smoothly. To help protect you and your assets as you get older. I peered at the top document, a power of attorney form already filled out with Wren's name, just as I'd seen on the hidden camera. I don't understand, I murmured, playing directly into their hands. Wren patted my arm with false tenderness. It's nothing to worry about, Sherry. You just sign here, and Ross and I will take care of everything. No more confusion, no more worries about bills or house maintenance. I looked up at them. These predators who had invaded my home and planned to strip me of everything, my possessions, my dignity, my independence. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine signing, just to see the triumph in their eyes turn to shock when they discovered what I had planned. But no, I needed to be smarter than that. Could I think about this? I asked, injecting a note of uncertainty into my voice. Maybe tomorrow. Their disappointment was palpable, but they couldn't push too hard without revealing their true intentions. Of course, Wren said, her smile strained. No rush. Why don't you rest now? As I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, I smiled to myself. 2 more days. In 2 days, I would have everything I needed to expose them completely. They thought they were closing in for the kill, but they had no idea they were walking into a trap of my own making. True to his word, Thomas had his son install additional cameras throughout my house. They worked while Wren and Ross were out running errands, which, according to Thomas's wife who followed them discreetly, actually meant meeting with a real estate agent to discuss options for selling a waterfront property quickly. By evening, miniature cameras were hidden in the living room light fixture, behind the kitchen clock, and in the small decorative vase in the hallway. The dining room now had a recording device concealed in the centerpiece, and, most importantly, a camera. Overlooked the desk where they'd been forging my signature. Everything transmits to this secure server, Thomas's son explained, showing me a simple app on a new phone they'd brought me, one Wren and Ross knew nothing about. You can watch in real time or review footage later. I thanked them, my hands trembling not from age or fear but from anticipation. After weeks of feeling powerless, I finally had the upper hand. That night, I waited until I heard their bedroom door close before carefully retrieving the small bottle of drops from the kitchen, the one I'd seen them using to drug my drinks. I replaced it with an identical bottle containing colored water, which Margaret had prepared. Then I settled into my room to watch the security feed. Around midnight, just as they had every night, Wren and Ross crept downstairs. I watched, heart pounding, as they spread papers across the dining table. We can't wait much longer, Ross was saying, his voice clear through the hidden microphone. She's getting more suspicious. Did you see how she kept asking about that bank statement today? Wren waved his concern away. Dr. Everhart's diagnosis is enough to start the process. Once we have temporary power of attorney, we can liquidate the major assets before anyone realizes what's happening. And if she refuses to sign? Ren's smile turned cold. That's what the medication is for. A double dose tomorrow night. And she'll sign anything we put in front of her. She won't even remember doing it. And afterward? Ross persisted. The nursing home might ask questions. Please, Ren scoffed. You've seen how she's been acting. Confused, disoriented, all documented by a respected doctor. We'll tell everyone it was her idea, that she recognized her own decline and wanted proper care. My blood ran cold at how easily they discussed discarding me, erasing my autonomy as if I were already gone. What about the house? Ross asked, tapping a document I recognized as my property deed. We'll need to move quickly. I've already spoken with a broker who specializes in discreet sales. No open houses, no publicity. We could have it sold within weeks. They continued planning my financial dismantling for nearly an hour, discussing which of my possessions were valuable enough to keep, which accounts to drain first, even how to handle nosy neighbors who might question my sudden absence. I recorded everything, my finger trembling slightly as it hovered over the screen. This wasn't just about protecting my assets anymore. This was about justice, for me and for Carlton, whose memory they had so casually erased. The next morning, Ren approached me with a glass of orange juice while I sat at the kitchen table. You should drink this, Sherry, she said, her voice honey sweet. You need your vitamins. I took the glass and pretended to sip, watching her satisfied expression over the rim. When she turned to make coffee, I poured it into the potted plant beside me. I was thinking, I said, keeping my voice deliberately faint, about those papers you showed me yesterday. Ren froze, then turned with carefully controlled excitement. The power of attorney? Have you decided to sign? Maybe today, I murmured. I don't like feeling so confused all the time. Maybe it would be better to let someone else handle things. The gleam in her eyes was predatory. That's very wise, Sherry. Very responsible. Throughout the day, I continued. My act, shuffling when I walked, forgetting simple words, appearing increasingly disoriented. By evening, both Ren and Ross were practically vibrating with anticipation. After dinner, Ren brought me tea laced with what she thought was their sedative. I pretended to drink deeply, then allowed my eyes to grow unfocused. I think I'm ready to sign those papers now, I slurred, watching as they exchanged triumphant glances. Ross hurried to retrieve the documents while Ren guided me to the dining room table. My hands shook, not entirely in act, as I picked up the pen they offered. It's very simple, Ren explained, pointing to the signature line. Just sign here, and Ross and I will take care of everything. I looked up at them, these people who had plotted to steal everything from me, my home, my dignity, my independence, who had invaded the house where I'd raised my son, who had erased Carlton's presence as if he'd never existed, who had drugged me, gaslighted me, treated me as less than human because of my age. My hand hovered over the paper. Both leaned forward eagerly. At that precise moment, the doorbell rang. Ross frowned. Ignore it. But the ringing continued, persistent. Then came knocking, loud and unmistakable. I'll get rid of them, Ren hissed, moving to the door. I heard her surprised exclamation, followed by multiple footsteps entering my house. Then Margaret's voice, unnaturally loud. We're here for the book club, Sherry. Hope we're not too early. Book club. Our agreed-upon signal. Ross looked panicked as Margaret appeared in the dining room doorway, followed by Liz Thomas and Dr. Peterson. Behind them, a uniformed police officer and a woman in a suit observed the scene with professional interest. What's going on? Ross demanded, hastily gathering the papers. Sherry isn't well. She needs rest. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady, I'm feeling better than I have in weeks. The confusion on their faces was almost comical as my friends moved to stand beside me, a protective wall of support. "Sherry has something to show you," Dr. Peterson said, her voice ice-cold as she addressed Wren and Ross. With steady hands, I opened the laptop Thomas's son had provided, turning the screen to face them. There we were, in high-definition video, Wren pouring something from a small bottle into my tea, Ross forging my signature on documents, both of them discussing how to drug me into compliance and steal my assets. "This is Officer Davis," Thomas said, gesturing to the policeman. "And this is Ms. Winters from Adult Protective Services. They have some questions for you both." The color drained from Wren's face. Ross took an unconscious step backward. "This is ridiculous," Wren stammered. "Sherry is confused. She's been diagnosed with dementia. She doesn't know what she's saying." "That's interesting," Dr. Peterson replied, removing a file from her bag. "Because my extensive examination yesterday showed no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. What it did show was evidence of benzodiazepine in her system, a drug she's never been prescribed." Ross looked wildly around the room, as if seeking an escape route. "We have the bottle," I said quietly, removing it from my pocket. "The one you use to drug my tea every night. The lab has already confirmed what's in it." Wren's composure shattered. "You don't understand," she spat, her mask of concerned daughter-in-law completely gone. "This bitter old woman has more than she needs. We deserved something after putting up with Carlton for years." The room went deadly silent. Even Ross looked shocked at her outburst. "Putting up with my son?" I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. Wren seemed to realize her mistake, but it was too late. The damage was done. Officer Davis stepped forward. "Wren Holloway and Ross Bennett, you're both under arrest for attempted fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and unlawful administration of a controlled substance." As he recited their rights, I watched their expressions morph from shock to anger to desperate calculation. The trap had sprung perfectly, catching them at the exact moment they believed victory was theirs. The woman from Adult Protective Services approached me gently. "Mrs. Taylor, you've been through a terrible ordeal. We'll need formal statements, but that can wait until tomorrow if you'd prefer." I shook my head, standing straighter than I had in weeks. "No, I want to do this now. I want this finished today." As Officer Davis led them toward the door, Wren turned back, her face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Sherry. You think you've won, but—" "Actually," I interrupted calmly, "it is over. You never should have underestimated me. That was your first mistake." As they disappeared into the police car outside, I felt a curious lightness. The nightmare wasn't completely over. There would be statements, possibly a trial, certainly difficult questions. But the immediate danger had passed. My home was mine again. My life was mine again. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "You did it." "Sherry," I smiled, thinking of Carlton, of the justice I'd secured not just for myself, but for his memory. "No," I corrected gently. "We did it. All of us together." The weeks following Wren and Ross's arrest passed in a blur of legal meetings, police interviews, and surprising revelations. I learned that Wren had been planning to leave Carlton even before his death, that their marriage had been troubled for years, and that she and Ross had known each other since college, hardly the recent acquaintances they'd pretended to be. Most disturbing was the medical examiner's decision to reopen the investigation into Carlton's death. While I waited for answers, I focused on reclaiming my home and my life from their poisonous influence. "You don't have to do this alone," Margaret said one morning, watching me strip the guest room bed where Wren had slept. "We could hire someone." I shook my head, yanking the sheets free with perhaps more force than necessary. "I need to do this myself. They invaded every corner of this house. I need to take it back, inch by inch." Room by room, I purged their presence. The modern furniture they'd brought in went to a women's shelter. The sleek appliances they'd installed were donated to a program for low-income families. The abstract art was replaced with family photos: Carlton at his college graduation, Harold, and me on our 30th anniversary, my parents on their small farm in Minnesota. The house slowly became mine again, but something still felt missing. One evening, as I stood in Carlton's old room, now emptied of the boxes and clutter Wren and Ross had filled it with, I realized what I needed to do. "I'm going to make this a proper room for Carlton again," I told Thomas when he stopped by, to check on me. "Not a shrine, like Wren accused me of creating, but a place where his memory can exist peacefully." Together with my friends, I transformed the space. We hung Carlton's fishing photos and academic achievements on the walls. His books returned to the shelves, not as untouchable relics, but as cherished possessions meant to be read and enjoyed. I placed his childhood baseball trophies alongside photos of him as an adult, creating a timeline of his too-short life. When we finished, the room felt balanced, honoring Carlton without freezing him in time. It was a room where I could sit and feel his presence without drowning in grief. 3 months after the arrest, Detective Morales asked to meet me at my home. Her expression was grave as I showed her into the living room. "We have the toxicology results from your son's case," she said without preamble. There were significant levels of a compound called aconite in his system, a poison derived from monkshood plants. It causes symptoms that can mimic heart failure in otherwise healthy adults. Though I'd suspected something like this, hearing it confirmed made my knees weak. I sank onto the couch, my hand pressed against my heart. "We found evidence on Wren's laptop," Detective Morales continued gently. "Research on untraceable poisons, how to administer them gradually, articles about seemingly healthy men dying suddenly, of heart failure." "She murdered my boy," I whispered, the words barely audible. "The district attorney is adding homicide charges," she confirmed. "With the evidence we have, plus what you helped us gather about their other crimes, they'll likely both serve substantial prison sentences." I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. Detective Morales left me with resources for grief counseling and victim services, promising to keep me updated as the case progressed. That night, I sat in Carlton's room, holding his baseball cap and finally allowing myself to fully feel the loss. Not just of my son, but of the future we should have had. Holidays we would have celebrated, milestones we would have marked together, quiet evenings simply enjoying each other's company. "I got justice for you," I told his photograph through my tears. "But I'd trade it all just to have you back." In the months that followed, I developed a new routine. Mornings in the garden, planting flowers Carlton had always admired. Afternoons, volunteering at the community center, teaching financial literacy to seniors, using my own experience to help others protect themselves. Evenings with friends, building the support network I'd neglected during my years of focusing solely on family. The preliminary hearing for Wren and Ross's case came 6 months after their arrest. I sat in the courtroom, back straight, eyes clear, as they shuffled in wearing prison jumpsuits. Wren avoided my gaze, but Ross stared defiantly, as if still believing he could intimidate me. Their lawyers attempted to paint them as misunderstood, claiming they'd only been trying to help a confused, older woman. The evidence, the videos, the forged documents, the drugged tea, the witness statements, and most damning of all, the poison that killed my son, told a different story. Both were held for trial without bail. Afterward, standing on the courthouse steps, a young reporter approached me. "Mrs. Taylor, how does it feel knowing they might spend decades in prison?" she asked, microphone extended. I considered the question carefully. "Justice isn't the same as healing," I finally said. "Their punishment won't bring my son back, but it might protect others from suffering the same fate." "Do you have any advice?" For other elderly people who might be vulnerable to similar schemes, she pressed. The word elderly made me smile slightly. 6 months ago, I might have accepted that label without question. Now it felt oddly disconnected from who I'd become. Trust your instincts, I told her. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And remember that age brings wisdom, not just vulnerability. Sometimes the people who underestimate you give you your greatest advantage. That evening, I invited my circle of friends, the ones who had helped save me, for dinner. Margaret, Liz, Thomas and his wife, Dr. Peterson, and several neighbors gathered around my dining table, the same table where Wren and Ross had once plotted to destroy me. A toast, Margaret said, raising her glass. To Sherry, the strongest woman I know. I shook my head, raising my own glass in return. To friendship, to community, to all of you who reminded me that I'm never truly alone. As conversation and laughter filled my home, I felt Carlton's presence, not as a painful absence, but as part of the love that surrounded me. The worst of my grief would never completely fade, nor should it. But it had transformed into something I could carry without being crushed beneath its weight. 1 year to the day after Carlton's funeral, I stood at his grave in the early morning light. I'd brought fresh flowers and a small fishing lure, a private joke between us from his childhood. I miss you every day, I told him, arranging the flowers carefully. But I'm doing well. I think you'd be proud. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and for a moment, I could almost hear his laugh. Later that day, I signed the papers to establish the Carlton Taylor Memorial Scholarship for nursing students specializing in geriatric care. It felt right to create something positive from our tragedy, a legacy that would help protect vulnerable seniors and honor Carlton's compassionate nature. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I reflected on the journey of the past year. I had lost my only child. I had been betrayed, manipulated, and nearly destroyed by people who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their greed. I had fought back when many would have surrendered. Most importantly, I had discovered my own strength, a quiet, determined resilience that even I hadn't fully recognized until it was tested. My phone chimed with a message from Margaret. Book club tomorrow? Everyone's asking for you, I smiled, typing my reply. Wouldn't miss it. Placing the phone beside me, I took a deep breath of the evening air, savoring its sweetness. At 63, I was not at the end of my story, but in the middle of a new chapter, one I was writing on my own terms. The peace I felt wasn't the blissful ignorance I'd known before tragedy struck. It was deeper, hard-won, tempered by loss and strengthened by survival. It was a peace that acknowledged pain without being defined by it. As darkness settled around me, I rose to go inside, pausing to look back at the porch swing where Carlton and I had spent so many evenings talking about everything and nothing. For a moment, I could almost see him there, smiling his crooked smile, forever 35 in my memory. Good night, son, I whispered. Then I turned and walked into my house, my home, secure in the knowledge that whatever came next, I would face it with the same quiet strength that had carried me through the darkest days of my life. They had underestimated me once. No one would make that mistake again. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final. Screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.